Hey there, it's astrologer and intuitive Robert Ohado. So, have you been feeling like life has been throwing some shit at you lately? I just had a whole bunch thrown at me trying to get ready to do this video. Have you been feeling like the energy around your life is sort of heavy and like just in the world, it feels like the light has gone out, and maybe in your personal life, it feels like the light has gone out as well? Do you just feel like every day you're racking up disappointments in your life with people, and it just feels like that list of people to forgive or things to forgive keeps growing and growing? And do you just generally feel exhausted and kind of over it? And so, I don't know, just bleh, that you don't really care about goals or what's going to happen in the future. And it just feels like it's too heavy to even think about the future. And to get excited about it, like there's just no spark anymore. Well, if you've been feeling like it's taking 10 times the effort to do anything, just like I experienced trying to get ready for this video, well, you're not alone. Let me just tell you. And we are now in the setup phase of a Mercury retrograde that is coming up here, depending on when you're seeing this video, on December 13th. As of now, it's December 9th. And that's going to be a Wednesday. So I am here actually to tell you all about it. And you know, it's very interesting when I was thinking of how to encapsulate all that I want to share with you and all that I wanted to communicate about this Mercury retrograde, because it's in two signs. That was actually four, but two signs, Sagittarius and Capricorn. And every time there's a Mercury retrograde in two signs, it's really intense. It's very unique. And it requires a real intuitive approach on how to understand what the retrograde's about, because you've got two archetypes, two signs involved. And what I'll share with you for now to intrigue you and get you excited about this particular guide, that's what this is, a video guide, is that when you have two signs, and I'm going to teach you this, what's really the theme of the retrograde is the space of transition from one sign to the other. So sure, you've got Sagittarius and Capricorn themes. I'm going to go through them and give you all the details, but it's really the transitional space from Sagittarius to Capricorn that is the main theme of the retrograde itself. So I cannot wait to share those insights with you. So I got you. We're going to do this. This is going to be a great guide for you. And by the way, if you want to grab this right now, in the video description, there is a link to a PDF guide, a free PDF guide that's going to have all the stats, dates, charts that you're going to see shortly here in this event, this live event guide. And you can go grab that. Go grab that and you can follow along, look at the charts yourself. It might be very helpful. And so, yeah, we're going to get ready, because this, you know what this is about? This is about asking this question: have you been climbing the wrong mountain? And that is the question that after I did all my downloads and looked at the whole specs and the whole holism of the Mercury retrograde itself, I thought, you know, it's really about us taking a moment to ask, hey, am I climbing the right mountain in my life? Or am I on the wrong one? How would I even know? So we're going to look at that question and all sorts of other things that go with that, because there's a lot in there during this live event. Welcome. I'm glad you're here. Okay, so welcome back. Let's do this. So I have to tell you though, I mean, I had every tech issue you could think of. For a minute, I didn't think this live stream was going to happen. So if you're watching on demand, this was actually a live stream. And so I hope to the gods, of course, it's Mercury retrograde. Why do I have to be an astrologer and do stuff when, you know, these sorts of tech issues are on high? That's really messed up, I'm just saying. And I'm going to talk about that in terms of the trickster. I'm getting tricked around, y'all. But anyway, so I'm really excited to share so much with you here. And I wanted to kind of give you a little primer on how to use this guide. And also just a little bit of a heads up, if you're new to me, to how I work with astrology, because I may not be right for you. Actually, I'm not an astrologer here that's going to sit here and give you a bunch of adjectives and stay on the surface of what the Mercury retrograde is about. In fact, I am someone's going to go very deep, and I'm going to take you into yourself, into your shadow, to help you understand what this Mercury retrograde is going to activate inside of you and outside of you, and why. Why do we go through these sort of dark night cycles, little smaller dark night cycles like Mercury retrogrades? What do they serve? So on the outside, I'll just tell you they serve your holism. They serve your potential, more of your potential being born into the world. They serve you moving into the next expression of your potential or your highest potential. And it's about having to take a moment to shed skin and maybe get off the wrong mountain, as we're going to discuss in this particular Mercury retrograde. And then that slots in all the REs that you hear, in terms of Mercury retrogrades: rethink, reboot, reevaluate, reorganize, reintegrate, all of that. Yeah, absolutely. But I'm not someone that traffics in superstition. I am a technician when it comes to astrology and intuition, for that matter, and of the human psyche. So what I'll be offering is maybe a little bit more unique than what you may have experienced with other astrologers. And I'm just asking you to, come to this a bit blank, because I'm going to kind of challenge maybe some of your previous, I'm going to say misconceptions. I'm going to politely say that, around what Mercury retrogrades even are, how they operate, and why you should even care. I mean, you should totally care. But this guide is about exploring the dominant activated archetypal energies and themes that this particular retrograde is going to have in it. And there's a lot there. So one of the things I want you to kind of image right now, and this just kind of goes back to mythology and who Hermes is within mythology, within the pantheon of the gods, which is Mercury, the Roman name, Mercury. Hermes is the Greek name. So Mercury, Hermes, was the messenger of the gods. And I think that's really important to take in, because if we looked at our solar system as a living energy pattern, as a matrix of co-creation and energy that's moving, and Earth herself, where we are, as its own co-creative matrix. Let me say it another way: as having different creative forces within her matrix that we could call gods, then Mercury retrogrades, Mercury itself, is a messenger of all the greater cycles in their energy. So breaking this into astrology, and this is actually going to be one of the themes, Jupiter right now is retrograde in Taurus. So Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius Capricorn is going to have a message from Jupiter retrograde in Taurus for you, for me, and a message on behalf of Pluto and its journey in and out of Aquarius, and a message on behalf of Saturn in Pisces, and a message on behalf of Uranus and Taurus, and a message on, you get me? So all of that whole hologram, all of that energy in a Mercury retrograde comes through the Mercury retrograde. And then what the Mercury retrograde is this messenger of it all through, this time, Sagittarius and Capricorn, but most notably, that space of transition between those two signs. So take a minute, track with me. Now, here's the thing. I'm going to go in and out of some higher end astrological concepts, language, but I'll always break it down into what it means. And I offer some of the higher end level because I know I have people that follow my work that are capable of thriving there. And actually, I'm speaking their language, if you will. But, astrology, that all said, is what we live. It's what we live. It's not some system removed from life in the sky that we just gawk at and then look at as if, we're going to wait for fate and fortune to finally smile on us. It is a map, a co-creative synchronistic map of synchronicity of what is happening in the energetic co-creative matrix of life here on Earth. And you're living in that. You are living it. So I keep it real grounded and really real that way. And I think that will serve you greatly, especially because we got Capricorn in the mix this time within this retrograde. So if I say something that sounds like astrobabble, just hang on for a sec, then I'm going to tell you what it means. And then there are just going to be times where, hey, my more advanced astrology students, this is for you. So, but mostly I'm going to stay in the groundedness of this is your life. This is what you live. We live within the energy of cycles. And people will say sometimes, well, I don't believe in astrology. You know what? Neither do I. I have happened to have lived a life where astrology has been a very powerful experience for me. I've experienced it as real. I don't believe in it. So I'm not in that either. I'm not in to prove anything. I mean, everyone, I think, would say, yes, we live in the energy of cycles. I don't know of anyone who would not say that. Our biology does itself. So, so that's a little bit of a sampler of my kind of approach to astrology. And then that said, this is to frame up how you can best use the information that follows and how to use this as a guide. So I'm definitely going to be presenting some core themes. And then the thing about archetypes, and that's what astrology traffics in and deals with, it is about the archetypal energies that are moving through the matrix of life right now. And they move through cycles and cycles of time. And that's what astrology is absolutely accurate and brilliant at mapping. And there's a deep empiricism to that. That's what these cycles show. So I'm going to get into, okay, well, then what is Mercury retrograde? What is that cycle alone? Because that's what we're here for. But I want you to really take in a lot of the dates I'm going to give you and watch your life. I got, really hooked on astrology when I was 19, I'm 51 now. That's a while ago. And that was because I watched to see if it really worked. And damn it, it did. It really did. And then I was like, ooh, and Carl Jung was into this too. Okay, because I was studying depth psychology and all sorts of other stuff at the time. So I got into it more from an empirical, like watch and see. Let's see, here's my chart. Let's watch and see if this, and I'm just telling you, after, I don't know how I'm at 30 years, 32 years, I don't know. I'm still a big fan. So track the dates. I'm going to give you lots of dates and follow some of my coaching, give it a shot. And do not do this or I will come and find you. Don't go hide under the bed, just waiting for it to be over and thinking all Mercury retrogrades are just this little phase where you have tech issues and, miscommunications and all the other stuff you probably have heard. That can be true. And it does seem to be, as my preparation for this live stream shows, that these things happen a little bit more during a Mercury retrograde. But there's a technical reason, and it's not superstitious. There's a technical reason I'm going to teach you about as to why we get that kind of phenomena and how we actually might be activating it unconsciously. But there's a way to neutralize that. That's why I do these guides. So definitely, check that out and get into the information I'm going to offer as an experience. I'm not asking you to believe anything. I'm saying, hey, take this, see if it works for you and if it's useful. And I know it's going to be because I just do. But, and then see how it goes. This is to help you really come into new awarenesses and wake up to new potential. Here's the thing you need to know about Mercury retrogrades right off the bat. They are always about becoming conscious of something in you that you're not conscious of, that you need to become conscious of so that you can indeed go on to this next level of your potential. This is just how we are as humans, right? It's how the laws of the psyche work. We have to wake up to something that we didn't see coming or didn't know was in us, to claim that treasure, and then through that empowerment and the gift of the treasure, move forward and co-create and expand and keep going, and it never ends. So welcome to Mercury retrograde. Now, I would say it probably would serve you well to watch this video at least a couple times, maybe more, because I go fast and furious. It's very layered. And you will find throughout the phases, 3 phases of Mercury retrograde, that you come into more and more layers as you live your life, have synchronicities happen. And then, oh my gosh, Robert said this and that, and that's exactly what I'm going through right now. And okay, he said this is the way through. Okay, great. Boom, got it. So you might want to come back a few times. And that's why that PDF guide might be really, really helpful. So once again, there is a link in the video description to a free PDF guide on my website where you can go get it and download it right now. It's full of charts, dates, all sorts of great stuff, a lot of stuff I'm going to bring you into here. You're going to be able to have that guide with right now. Go get it now and watch and track with me. So let's see, where are we? Now, keep in mind this. This is a truth that I found about co-creation in life. There is fate. There just is. I'm not controlling the weather, are you? I'm not controlling, there's certain things in life we're just not controlling. And we could call that fate. And then there's also destiny. There's things that we can have some influence in or control within. And there's this middle ground where you could have influence if you woke up to something unconscious in yourself. You stop getting hit by, as Carl Jung would talk about, the unconscious happening outside of you as fate, and actually integrated it and then became this co-creative dynamo and started to rock your life more consciously. So there is both fate and destiny. And this guide is about, hey, how can I help you as an alchemist and guide move from the lead to gold and then become more conscious and more dynamic in your co-creative journey and open up other doors of possibility. That's what this is about, really. So that's the destiny of it all. Now, let's get into the Mercury retrograde. And this is going to be a little stat date heavy at first. I've got to bring the cycle framework forward, and then we're going to fill it in with the themes. That's where you're going to do your inner work and see what's up. And then I'm going to go into what I feel to be the main theme. And then you're going to find and see, okay, that's speaking to me, I'm tracking, et cetera, et cetera. So let's talk about the astronomy and astrology of Mercury retrogrades, generally speaking, so you understand the cycle. Now, I said 3 phases with emphasis earlier because there actually are 3 phases in a Mercury retrograde. It's not just the retrograde. That is the meat. That's the meat and potatoes. But there's a setup phase, and that's where we are now. And there's an integration phase after Mercury has finished its retrograde and it goes direct. I'm going to map all of that out for you with exact dates and then talk about the energy of each phase and how to work with it. So just know that. Now, what is a Mercury retrograde anyway? Real quickly here, it's astronomically, like it's an astronomical phenomenon. Well, it's really just here we are on Earth and we're orbiting around the sun, and Mercury is inside of our orbit around the sun. And there's just this optical illusion that happens about every 3.5 months where it just appears that Mercury stands stationary in the sky and appears to start moving backward. Now, no planets go backward, right? When they're moving around the sun, we're all just going one direction. But it's the same sort of phenomena if you were driving, on the highway and you were moving forward and the car, to your right was moving a bit slower, and it would appear as if they went backward and you're going forward, but they're not really going backward. You're just moving forward at a different speed in relationship to that car. And then it creates this sort of optical illusion that they're going backward. They're just going slower. And there's just ways the orbits line up, and Mercury is very consistent this way. And it happens 3 times a year, Mercury retrograde, where that optical illusion's in play. Now, the way that astrology works as a tool of synchronicity is that if it's happening and we're observing, even if it's an illusion, right? Optical illusion, Mercury going backward, well, that means something, because that's how synchronicity and the psychic law of synchronicity works. Something happening outside of you is connected in tandem to something happening inside of you. So I could just as well say, hey, Mercury is going retrograde in you, not just in that sky, but also in you. And I think that's a very useful way to think about it, because then it gets you into the driver's seat of this cycle and its energy. And you could call it astrological weather, right? So, hey, what's the usefulness of a guide like this? Well, hey, I don't know. Do you want to know what kind of weather is going to be going down inside of you and out there before you make plans? I would, because it's going to inform you of maybe this isn't the day I bring my bikini. Maybe this is the day I bring my winter coat. I don't know. Maybe this is the day I don't even leave the house. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of the astronomy of it. Now, in addition, I want to add in this little thing we're going to come to later because it's very important. There's 3 phases of a Mercury retrograde. And in the second phase, which is Mercury retrograde, there is a midpoint. And that astronomically is when the sun, and I have a chart I'm going to show you that will show you this. The sun and Mercury line up in a conjunction, it's called in astrology, and actually in astronomy as well, line up in the sky in the exact kind of lineup. And that is a very important moment. It's the midpoint of the retrograde, and it also is really the crescendo of the retrograde's alchemy. So we're going to talk about that specifically to this particular retrograde in Sagittarius and Capricorn. But just keep in mind that this is about something happening in you. And let me just break this down right now. It doesn't matter. Just hear this, please. It doesn't matter if you're not a sun in Sagittarius or Capricorn. That is not how this works. In fact, when I start to identify for you that middle space between Sagittarius transitioning to Capricorn, you're going to realize what is the truth, and that's you have every astrological archetype and energy in you that the whole zodiac represents, because every astrology sign represents a stage of bio-psycho-mystical development as human beings. And by psycho, I don't mean crazy. I mean psychological, psycho-spiritual. So all of us go through a Sagittarius phase of development, a Capricorn phase of development. Now, your birth chart and your sun sign represent something specific to your journey as a human being in this life, something specific to your soul agreements or your destiny. And that's where it gets more unique to you. But you are the whole chart. You've got Capricorn and Sagittarius in your chart, as do I. It doesn't matter if you don't have any planets in it or your sun isn't in it. So I hope I've made myself clear. And by the time I get to the themes, you're going to be like, he's onto something, because this stuff's going on in my life and I am not a Capricorn. Okay, so let's just get that out of the way. Now, let me bring in a couple other superstitions and break this down so that you understand. Having said that, some of the conventional wisdom may not be as wise as it seems out there. You might hear like, hey, never sign an agreement during a Mercury retrograde. Don't sign a contract. Don't make big decisions. Well, that might apply sometimes. It just depends, because generally speaking, what the retrograde is about is this. It's about new information coming into your conscious awareness, whether that's information about your own self, your own soul that you had in the shadow before, whether that's information about a relationship or a business partnership, or what's happening outside of your sphere of perception that you need to know about because you're about to make a decision, maybe a business decision, and what's happening outside of what you're seeing is a recession's around the corner. And I think I'd want to know about that, right? Before I'd make a decision business-wise. So Mercury retrograde comes in and goes, yes, I'm going to slow you up. And you need to know about this other thing because it serves your greater holism to know that, so you can make the most informed decision possible. So how do we then apply the actual wisdom of not signing contracts or making big decisions during a Mercury retrograde? Well, you apply it via whether the retrograde this time for you happens to deal with an arena where there's a decision that you've got to make. So let's just say, because it's Capricorn, it is a business decision. Okay, great. Don't make any big business decisions. Maybe that's true for you this time. Maybe I would advise that. But I don't know. Do you need to worry about the Gemini area of your life where, you're going to start an online course and this and that, and you have some decisions to make in that regard? No, because this isn't a Mercury retrograde in Gemini. So the area that's active and the themes there, which you're going to probably, if you hang out with me, go, okay, I got to be mindful of the Sagittarian and Capricorn zones of life right now and not make any major decisions in those, because there's new information coming and I want to make the most informed decision possible. Now, this is just a little guide. I don't want you to get fundamentalist about it, but that's the best way to approach those sorts of things. So if you've got a relationship that involves Capricorn and Sagittarius issues, which I'm going to talk about, so you're going to know exactly what those are, then yeah, I think I would probably wait up and just at least till the midpoint, because that's when the revelation that's been stalking you finally arrives through the conjunction of the Sun and Mercury. Okay, I hope I've settled some of these superstitions down a little bit. But that said, what is Mercury about? Yes, it's messenger of the bigger cycles and the whole, let's say, matrix of life and its co-creative processes and your place in all that. And you needing to get a message from that greater field so that you can make the most informed decisions for your destiny. Yeah, boom. But Mercury's about your mind, the human ego mind. And I am not an ego basher. I don't think that's useful. I think we have to have an ego. Actually, it's called identity, to live this life and live it well and actually have a healthy psychology. So when I say ego mind, I'm just meaning, hey, your mind can only see so much. That's just the limit of the human mind. If we want to see past that, we need intuition. I happen to be teaching a masterclass on this right now, which maybe I'll mention later. But this is the thing about the mind. Our minds are conditioned beasts, right? They're conditioned creatures. By what? By society, by our history. We have mental sets, thought patterns, and we have identities in us, archetypes, that have their own mental sets, their own beliefs, their own ways of thinking. So Mercury retrogrades are about, there's a way you're thinking or a way you're seeing something in your life that is not working for you. And it's not working in context to what you agreed to become next in your potential. So this is the time. Now, in what potential? The Sagittarian and Capricorn area of your life, that potential. So this is a time when you got to go, okay, Jesus, take the wheel. I've got to get my ego mind in the back seat here and let something of a greater informed information come forward and educate me and help me see past the limits of my human ego mind. The limits aren't right or wrong. They're just true. So this is where you need a more intuitive perspective to push through and inform you. Now, here's the thing. The way life tends to work is that we are getting flagged by our highest potential all the time. And it's saying, hey, you're not seeing clearly here. Hey, you're missing some red flags here. Hey, there's something coming you're not aware of yet. Hold up choice. Just stop. And then if we're too pressured in our busy schedules, our nonstop information age, our decide now urgency, well, then we're not going to stop. And then the trickster side of Mercury comes on and goes, oh, yes, you are going to stop. You know how I'm going to stop you? I am going to wipe out your hard drive. I'm going to crash your cell phone and I'm going to crash your hard drive. And I'll trick you around the block. Why? Because you're not open to truth in any other way right now. So, and this is where if you find yourself in lots of phenomena like getting ready to do a live and shit's hitting the fan, it's time to slow down. And actually, I'm very aware of my own little Mercury retrograde crazy. But just so you understand, the trickster side of Mercury only activates when we're not willing to listen to truth directly, to new information directly. Now, why wouldn't we want to do that? Well, because maybe we have an identity sitting there going, no, I'm not open to hearing that. because this is how I see myself. And you're trying to tell me that that's not completely the truth? Not interested. I mean, one way to really think about this that I think really illustrates it is political tribalism. Well, I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican, so no, I'm not going to open my mind to see those facts. No, thank you. That's just too inconvenient for me and my tribe and my tribal mentality. Oh, but it's still the truth. And each of us has that in us. And so to the degree that you shut down perception to honor identities in you, or shadow loyalties to identities you've inherited in your family, or your political tribalism, or I don't know what, that's how much you're going to set yourself up for trickery. And that's just a fundamental way the human psyche works, and intuition works within the human psyche. So when you get the trickster side of Mercury during a Mercury retrograde, it is because you are resisting knowing something, listening to your inner voice, and getting a bigger picture download. Why? Well, the identities are part of it. And then also, guess what? If you hear new information, you have to change. That's usually the next step. So you have to catch your blind side and go, oh yeah, I'm going to go into the unknown with that information is going to catapult me right into the unknown. And no, thank you. So I'm good with this old tired mountain I've been climbing. So just keep that in mind. That's how the trickster side comes online. It's not just some superstition. This stuff happens just because it's Mercury retrograde. That's just, no. There is meaning. There are psychic dynamics in play here, intuitive dynamics in play. So now you know. And what I would say is this is a time then to sit back and go, wait a minute. Something wants me to listen to new information so that I can be maybe upgraded here in my life, reworked, refined. I got to let some stuff go. I've got to shift some identities. Okay. And then you have to become skillful in that, really. And if you don't, this is the Carl Jung version of fate hitting you, right? You're resisting the life force itself that wants to flow through you and continue to have this experience of growth and evolution. And therefore, it starts to get messy. And the 2x4 starts smacking around. You know what I'm saying? Now, you can avoid this. And that's actually why I do these guides, because I want to help you not have to do that version of Mercury retrograde. And, we're all human and we have our blind sides and we have our resistance and our unconscious resistance, most notably. And so it's okay. But what this will help you do, it'll train you to catch it quick. And you'll go, wait a minute. Oh, I need to get curious about why I got the trickster in my house. And I'll tell you, the trickster has its own kind of energy to me. I can tell when it's around. I can tell when I've activated or it's active in my life. It has a frequency that's kind of like static electricity a little bit. It's sort of, like a frayed wire. So if you start to feel that afoot, I'm going to guide you on how to go in and mitigate, neutralize that, and open to the Mercury retrograde message or messages that are trying to get through to you. Now, let's just talk about how the setup phase rolls, because I think that's where we start to get set up for what will unfold and be our themes throughout the Mercury retrograde itself. So what the setup phase is, and this is where I'm probably going to show you the dates just because I think that it will be easier for you to see this visual and the dates themselves and tie it together. The setup phase is when you are, the setup phase is when Mercury hits the degree in the zodiac where it's going to retrograde all the way back through the retrograde itself. So let me just pull up the dates and show you this, because this is really going to be, I think, the best way to see it. Here we go. All right. So these are the entire stats for this Mercury retrograde. Now, the setup phase, that band you see there, that is actually the degrees of the zodiac signs this time that Mercury is going to go all the way over and then turn retrograde and go back over again, and then station direct and go back over one last time. So you see there that the setup phase began on November 25th. So it already started at 22 degrees Sagittarius. That blue part of the band is Sagittarius, and you can kind of see the sign, the sigil, the symbol for Sagittarius over there on the left side. Now, once you get to that 0 degrees, now you're at Capricorn. And what's incredible about this retrograde, if you can just sort of visually see this retrograde actually equally happens in Sagittarius and Capricorn. Exactly. So this retrograde setup started November 25th at 22 degrees Sagittarius, and then the retrograde will start on December 13th at 9 degrees Capricorn. And then there's a midpoint, which we'll discuss. And then it's going to station direct on January 1st. How about that? This Mercury retrograde finishes on New Year's Day. Come on, synchronicity. Right at 22 degrees Sagittarius. And then we have the integration phase that goes from New Year's Day, January 1st, all the way to January 20th, where you'll see that's when Mercury passes that last time over the degrees it had just retrograded over. So that hopefully gives you a little bit of a visual. We're going to come back to this, numerous times, but that's the setup phase. That's what I would call is the retrograde zone. Now, it's not just a retrograde zone, it's a messages zone. This is where your little dark night cycle happens, the zone. And because there's 2 signs, it's really dynamic this time. The themes are profound. And here's what you need to understand. They're already active. I want you to think back to November 25th and just sort of scan your timeline here and just sense in your life, get symbolic, because that's the way you have to kind of maneuver and move in your perception to see the themes that have already been activated. So just kind of think, hey, has there been like this theme or some themes that have been coming up again and again, maybe in different situations, but if I get symbolic, it's the same stuff, different scenarios, but the same theme or themes. So one of the ways you can best do that, so you can sort of make an anchor into yourself on what I just said, is by looking at society and culture and the headlines that are happening in the news to understand what the themes are, because they're always there. So I'm going to get into those later at a cultural, social level, but also tie it to you personally. But just for now, this is about you kind of letting your psyche activate and just consider what has been coming up that has been thematic. And thematic means it's archetypal. I can see that there are just these consistent things going on. And in that, and I love approaching Mercury retrogrades this way. I want you to think about inside of that, what are the questions this cycle wants you to ask? One of the most powerful ways to move through any Mercury retrograde is by getting curious and asking questions, because that's how we open to what? New information. And what does the cycle want? To get new information to you. So the way you can start this is, what have the themes been? What's been kind of coming up? And how is it connected? And start to just sense what some of those might be for you. I'm going to give you, if you will, metrics, archetypal metrics to understand and really land these shortly. But I got to set the framework down and get your intuitive psyche moving here, your intuitive bandwidth open. So the setup phase, though, is where the tracks are being laid down. The alchemy is being laid down. And then when Mercury stations retrograde, it's on. It's on. Now there's a fire under the alembic, and we are in the calcinatio, and we are burning up the dross from lead to gold, baby. It's, that's where the dark night sort of energy is present, and it's time to become aware. Now, one of the questions you may have, because I certainly would, is, well, what is this all for? Like, what? Okay. Well, what is life for? Astrology is what we live. It's a co-creative journey into the all, and it all is held together through holism. So this is about, once again, serving some part of your holism. What does that mean? It means all of you gets to be here. All of you is enough. All of you is just a miracle. It's about coming into that empowered space of understanding there is an all of you, and all of it gets to be here, even the not so fun stuff about yourself. That's holism. So these cycles are about the evolution of your empowerment, your capacity to be a co-creator, and your capacity to be a spiritually mature adult. We got Capricorn in the mix this time. That word is appropriate. Now, I want you to give a little time, and in the PDF guide, there's some more questions here to follow, and just see what comes up for you around that at your own pace. Obviously, I got to keep moving on here because I got to get you through the whole retrograde map. But what I have to impress upon you this time, this wouldn't always be true. This time it is that this time, the Mercury retrograde isn't just about Sagittarian themes, Capricorn themes. It has both, but it's about how do we evolve from Sagittarius to Capricorn? Now, to answer that question, at least a little for now, and get the themes starting to roll, I'm going to present to you the zodiac wheel, which is also in the PDF guide. So here's where you'll find all the signs of the zodiac and the planetary symbols. And this will help you if you're looking at a birth chart or you're kind of new to astrology, understand what they are, part one. But part two, this also shows the way that every sign, starting at Aries, follows the other in a sequence. And folks, these aren't just, stars in the sky that the ancients hung their psyches on. These are bona fide stages of maturation and development as human beings. Aries is, hey, I was just born. I was just given a name / identity, and I am here. Okay, great. Taurus, I have a body. I'm 2 years old now, and here I am with my body. Gemini, I'm learning languages. Okay, now I'm beginning to communicate with my environment and learn languages, and I ask, what's this? What's this? What's this? Oh, Cancer, now I'm headed to kindergarten and realizing I'm from a tribe. Oh, I didn't know that before. Okay, it's really sinking in, and I'm starting to realize that I'm from this emotional nexus called the family psyche, and there's different tribes out there. There's different families. There's different origins for different kids. And then, Leo, this is what's most unique about my own essence. And there's an aspect of my soul's light here starting to peek through. And this is the essential creative self I'm starting to explore in myself. And Virgo, okay, we're going to start to tie that all together, and around we go. And I could go through every damn sign and give you a little snippet / stage of development, or a deep, thorough, yes, biopsychomystical read on it all. But we got to get ourselves up to Capricorn and Sagittarius. And if you look, Sagittarius is first, and then Capricorn is next. But here's the thing. The way you decode this retrograde is in reverse, because that's exactly how the retrograde begins. It starts in Capricorn and goes backward to Sagittarius. What is the transitional stage that we all experience from Sagittarius, which is this? In part, we're going to go deeper. Sagittarius is about higher learning. This is about the time in life many people go to college, higher education, or some sort of skills training. We're done with primary education and we now go to something different. And it's also where we start to ask in our young adulthood, because we're going to be about, 20, 21 years old here. We're going to start asking bigger questions like, why was I born? What is the meaning of life? These are Sagittarian questions. The seeker archetype is here. We're going to ask, what does it mean? What does this mean? Are there co-creative laws that run this joint called life? I mean, and then guess what? Most of us probably, right? This is true for me. Already were born into a whole program here. Mine was called Catholicism. I don't know what yours was. And then now, depending on our journey and what we've agreed to experience in our journey on a soul level, we're going to start asking questions about that. Me as a gay man was like, really? I'm going to hell for being, I don't know who I am. I didn't choose to be gay. I just chose to be honest about it. I've always felt this way. Did you choose to be straight someday? Did you just wake up one day and do that? Because I didn't. See what I'm saying? So we start to we want to understand, and it's in our spiritual DNA, who we are at that level of spirit. Where would we come from? And what we're given, level 1, is religion. I'm not making that right or wrong, but are you starting to feel some themes lately about the world lately? And I don't know, where has religion oftentimes led us to? Well, I haven't seen a lot more kindness. I've seen a lot more wars and killing each other over gods, but not a lot of loving kindness, frankly. And hey, as a gay man, I certainly know where religion's led people to in its most shadow and darkest expression, if you will, fundamentalist expression. So, but Sagittarius is this zone, and it's more. There's many levels and layers in this dimension of Sagittarius, but it's where we start to understand the world through a symbolic, creative, divine sense of order and law. And oftentimes that's just given to us as law from the religions we inherited and how society and culture are patterned by that. Now, bring Mercury in. How has that patterned how you think? And let's reframe that. How has it patterned how you think in ways you are not even conscious of? So in my intuitive readings, this was the gift of being an intuitive and having this journey of doing 10,000 readings over 15 years and being like a reporter in the field of consciousness through intuition, just coming in blank and seeing what made us, what made someone who they were. As I didn't come in with formula or dogma, I came in with just a willingness and a curiosity to see the truth. And when you do that, it's amazing what you can see. And what I began to see is that, we can call ourselves emancipated. And trust me, this is connected to the retrograde, so track. Emancipated from fundamentalist thought, because we're in spirituality now. But I've seen the same exact patterning of Christianity, a damning, wrathful God, translate right into spirituality and self-help. It's called the law of attraction. Hey, if you're not positive enough, that law of attraction God's going to smite your ass down. So get positive. Doesn't sound much different from Yahweh to me. And yet we think we're free from the pattern. No, we're not. We're just seeing one true co-creative law through the eyes of any Christian tradition where that God, banished you from the garden. So it's so rich and interesting to get into, where are we really at then with how we actually live within the psychic structures of society? Have we broken free, or are we just given everything New Age language and we're still praying to the same damning, wrathful, sort of patriarchal God? But now we just call it law of attraction God that's going to reward us if we're good, but punish us if we're bad. And we'll call it frequency and vibration. Okay, good. And I'm here to tell you that's actually not how it works. But here's the thing. What's this Mercury retrograde going to do? And if I just triggered you, stay with me, because that is part of shadow work. This Mercury retrograde, because this is just one level, by the way, I'm just giving you an example to lay tracks down. The Mercury retrograde starts with Capricorn and goes back to Sagittarius. So what Capricorn's about is the manifested structures socially that you've internalized also, that you live in now, that are no longer suitable for your potential to come through you. And you need we as a culture need something else. So currently we seem to think that we're going to resolve conflict and war within the narratives of the war and conflict, which is not going to happen. We've got thousands of years of proof here to show us that's not true. Resolutions like this come outside of the current narratives. And then people think they're outside the narrative, and they're not. They're just the other side now of the narrative. Just as an example, to locate this in some recent events. And so now this can apply to you in any area of your life. Where do you have manifested Capricorn karma kicking your ass? You're in a system or a structure, a job, because that's also part of Capricorn, or some kind of social thing, and it is not working. And the karma keeps piling up. And what that karma should optimally do for the retrograde is have you go back to, where did this come from? And now we got to go back to Sagittarius to find that answer. Because in Sagittarius, we're going to discover, okay, it came from some, I don't know, maybe a belief system. Maybe it came from something I inherited or I'm unconscious of, that I thought I had broken free of that psychic structure, but actually it just has new clothes. And how do I know? Because the karma tells me so. So I want to give that layer for now. I'm going to get into more specificity for you personally, but this is the space between Sagittarius and Capricorn, because from Sagittarius, we take belief, we take our truth. This is where in Sagittarius, we come to understand what is our truth. But that depends on how, I would say, awake you are. Because if you're not real awake and others are doing your truth for you through religion or other things like that, well, is that really your truth? Because this retrograde is going to shake it down and go, what's your truth? I'm talking, pull your soul up, let's sit it down and ask it about truth. I'm not talking go to this tribe or that tribe or get on that side or that side. We're get out of the narratives and come to the soul. And guess what? What did I just say? Get out of culture. Get out of society. Your soul's a celestial being, not a cultural one. Stop acting like it's a cultural being and that it's bound in some religious tradition. It's not. When we all leave this plane, we're no longer Catholic, Jewish, Muslim. It's done. We're not even Buddhist. Come on. And so then who are we? And this is where we're now locate what I just said in the current activated narratives of society and culture. Not too hard. Now locate it in you. Where are you in some situation or dynamic where the truth is ready to rock your world, but you can't see that you're currently in a lie? And we got, truth is just so dynamic because there are different levels to truth. There's your personal truth. I have personal truth. You do. Then we got relative truth. It's relative to me. It's true. Relative to you. It's true. And then we got universal. It's true for us all. And then we've got, I'd say, soul contract, soul agreement truth. Hey, this is true per my destiny, but not yours. And yet we take personal truth and we try to make it universal and then make everyone else, conform to it. And doesn't go too well. So it may be true for someone else that gays go to hell. Sure ain't true for me. So, and this is about locating, if we're going to go to universal truth, we're all enough. We all deserve love. We all deserve life. And everyone has the same value. And we're all on this journey, and it's hard, and it's amazing. And we live in a both and world. And we need to move more toward that in our own ways of thinking and understand that there are as many paths to God as people alive. Why are we killing each other over my path versus yours? And now it's my political party has become the new messianic projection. There's some truth. And so, hey, this is me just pointing out karmic coordinates. Because what happens with truth and what we arrive at in Sagittarius then translates to culture and society through law, order, governmental structures, political structures, just general public structure. And that's the organicity and sequential nature of how we develop here. It's not right or wrong, but it can step out of line with holism and often has and does. And that's what this retrograde is saying. Hey, when you look at Sagittarius to Capricorn, something about that bridge in your life is not working. Something got lost, if you will, in translation. What was that? What is that? Because it's time to take responsibility for that. So if you have a certain core set of truths and beliefs, how do they translate into your engagement with society? That's what we do in Capricorn. We engage through a role with society. Normally, we call that our job or career. And at, a maybe other level, calling. I like calling hyphen career or career hyphen calling personally, but I'm a both and kind of guy. So what I have to make very clear is this Mercury retrograde is so powerful because it is addressing that bridge, that transitional space between Sagittarius and Capricorn. I mean, literally, it is equally divided in the degrees of each sign. I don't see that often when you have two signs like that. Perfect. Now, the midpoint, just to foreshadow something here, actually happens at 0 degrees Capricorn. I'm going to show you that chart later, which to me says the bigger issue here is the shadow side and how we think in unconscious or shadow ways about our societal structures and our politics and our wars and our sides and who takes this side and that side. That's what's up. There's something off about how we think about these things. Off meaning what? What's the metric of off? It's not in alignment with holism and honoring equality, everyone's right to be alive, and everyone's right to think past either or and live more from both and get curious. What's the both and of every damn situation in my life? Because if we're not in both and, we're in the shadow side of Sagittarius, which is fundamentalist thought. It's either or. And then we now roll with fundamentalist gods. So we already know what that does, right? Now, having said all that, Judge Judy is here. I want you to consider, now go back to November 25th. And now think about, what are some of the themes I've seen coming up in my life? Where have I felt a pressure to look at karmic results, karmic systems in my life, and how that don't feel so good? Think about that while I take a drink. And by the way, welcome to the social life. I'm going to check in with everybody and take a minute and try not to lose my voice. So we're just getting started a little bit here. Are you feeling the themes? I want to hear from you. I can see your comments, so bring it. And let me know. And we're just getting rolling. I'm laying down the tracks. We're going to go over them a few times. Hey, Kate Zimmer. Hey, Heidi Marie. And while we're taking this break, hey, Peggy Folt, wie geht es dir? Ich hoffe, alles gut bei dir aus Deutschland. Okay. Yeah, right. Cool. So I want to tell you about something real quick as a sponsor to this video, which is me. I am currently, for the first time actually in 7 years, doing a masterclass training on intuition with this particular course called Vertical Intuition, Hearing Your Inner Voice in a Horizontal World. This is a 7-part course. We start with lesson 1 this Wednesday. We start with lesson 1 the day Mercury goes retrograde. So this is the perfect, because Sagittarius is in this retrograde, and that is the most intuitive sign in many regards. But this is the perfect course for this retrograde in many ways. Now, if you want to find out more about it, just go to my website, ohado.com. It's right on the homepage, but there's also a link under the sponsors of this video, and you can check out more. It's 50% off for a limited time, and doors will close for a year on December 28th. So you cannot take this just any old time you want to. I'm there hands-on guiding you each lesson. There's a lot of other stuff going on that requires engagement. So I'm only going to be able to do that, once a year. And I'm super excited. You guys, this is an incredible series. And if you want to check it out and see if you're vibing, I've got a YouTube series right now. And this just came out, Intuition versus the Mind's Useless Guidance. Totally perfect for this Mercury retrograde as well. That's on YouTube right now. So you could go watch that. And I've got, it's a 4-part series actually of videos. And the next one coming up this coming week is going to be this one, Psychic versus Intuitive Abilities. Did you know that psychic abilities are not intuitive abilities? They're very different things. Yeah, it's good stuff. And there's 2 more parts making that a 4-part series that you'll see on YouTube. So go check out those videos when you get a chance, and check out that masterclass as well. It's really powerful new content. Okay. Back to Mercury retrograde. Now, having set some tracks down, and let me just say this. Let's just come together in this shared understanding as alchemists that sometimes, if not oftentimes, we need a little triggering to get the juices flowing, the transformational juices flowing. So if I am saying things that maybe you're like, oof, I think you just hit a landmine. Well, let's embrace that. Yeah. I mean, triggering is part of transformation, honestly. I think shadow work especially. And Mercury retrogrades, they're a shadow process. So I'm not the astrologer that's going to tell you light and fairy. And this is just, a great opportunity. It is a great opportunity to do some shadow work, to look at your dark side, to get triggered and transform. So yeah, it's great for that. Now, that said, Mercury retrogrades can be very disorganizing. And it's a disorganization of what? Your mind. The way you have these conditioned ways of thinking that you're unconscious of. And we all have this. It takes a certain skillfulness and ongoing cultivation to get out of what I call actually, and I teach this in my masterclass, prism distortions, which just a little bit here, you're distorting what's really true, objectively true about something, because you've got an identity in you, or you've got something in you that is filtering out information. Once again, I think this is so obvious when it comes to political tribalism. That's why I'm a registered and independent. I'm not going into that. So everyone's taking bias and then using that to determine what they can and can't see, or really will and won't see. So we all do it to some degree, but Mercury retrogrades really call us out on it. And once again, this is just to get you going to some new potential, and transform. Now, we're going to come back to the stats of the retrograde. So I'm going to bring this graph up again. And we're going to kind of frame up a little bit of what I've already said about it, and then move from there into how to find this in your natal chart. So with my second camera, God willing, I want you to look at this graph. And if you happen to have a copy of your natal chart, pull it out. And what you're going to look for is where this retrograde zone is happening in your birth chart. And I'm going to do an example here to show you how to do that. And then see from there, really what we're looking for in this regard is which houses or which house is active with the retrograde. And that's going to give you a lot of information if you know the 12 houses of astrology regarding the zone of your life, of your psyche, in which this retrograde energy is happening. So let's look at Tom Smith. Not a real person. Anyone who has this exact chart is just purely coincidental. I'm doing the disclaimer right now. So this is a chart we're going to look at. Now, if you look at Tom Smith, born in Phoenix, November 14th, 1983, and we've got a sun in Scorpio, and his natal Mercury is actually in Sagittarius. So what my objective here is just simply to show you through Tom's chart where Mercury is retrograding. And then hopefully from that, you can find this in your own chart. And then that'll be another layer or foundation set down for you to use during this guide. Okay, so remembering, we're looking at what? 22 degrees Sagittarius to about 9 degrees, I'm rounding up, 9 degrees Capricorn. All right, so I'm switching to my second camera here. Mercury retrograde, baby. I didn't have sound. You guys are right. Thank you. Yeah, that was one of the new shots I added, and I didn't add sound to it. Great. I'm going to summate what I was saying. Let me come back to it with sound real quick. Sorry about that. I'm going to redo a little bit of that. Okay, this is Tom, everybody. And what I was mapping out here was the houses that the retrograde's happening in. So you got 9 degrees Capricorn, 22 degrees, that's the retrograde zone. There's no redos when you're live either, per se. And so this is just going to frame up Tom's zone of activation, and it's also going to activate the 9th and 10th houses. And for Tom, I'm just riffing around. This is not a real person, but I was riffing around to say that, okay, well, the retrograde is going to focus a lot on how Tom tends to over project this sense of optimism in a reckless way, or he's kind of a gambler. And then that keeps him from actually dealing with Capricorn reality. And that's become a pattern of conflict for him, especially in relationships where he's expected to adult up. He's got this Mars and Virgo, but it's squared this Neptune, Sagittarius. And, he's got this challenge during this retrograde to kind of look at, okay, I've got to stop this pattern and ways of thinking about life where I can take these risks and bet it all and then just trust things will work out, because I've got a lot of, as gamblers may, a lot of evidence that things don't, and that Lady Luck doesn't always shine on you all the time. So it's about self-responsibility and also building a different kind of confidence in Tom's self. And anyway, he's not real. I'm just giving examples of how this would maybe possibly connect and track to your own chart. And the whole point of this was to show you how to locate the retrograde zone, 9 degrees Capricorn, 22 degrees Sagittarius in your own chart. So that hopefully is helpful. And so 22 degrees would start here, because that's 25 on the cusp of the midheaven, and go all the way into 9 degrees Capricorn, which would be about right there. 0 degrees would be about right there. So these cusps show where the house, in terms of the degrees inside the house, touches into the zodiac sign and creates a cusp. So that's 18 degrees Capricorn here. Then you go to 15 degrees. Now, obviously, 0 degrees Aquarius would be somewhere in here. And that's how most charts actually work anyway. And then over here, I was showing this is an intercepted sign. The whole sign of Aries is in this house. And then, of course, it's opposite. is going to be over here with Libra, the whole sign of Libra in the 7th house. So I hope that's a little helpful. Sorry, there was no sound there for probably the majority of that, but I did kind of just go over most of that for you. Okay. Okay, so what you're going to do then is, as I was saying before, is take this information and apply it to your own birth chart if you are so inclined. Just helps if you're more into astrology, you want to get deeper. This will help you really get into it. Once again, all this is in this PDF guide that I've created for you on ohado.com. You can go and download this right now. And don't you love how that is the same exact image? Oh, Mercury retrograde. Try being a teacher during Mercury retrogrades. It's really fun. So let's move on now to some other things, some other themes, and tie in some other cycles, because I did mention that Mercury retrograde is messenger of the gods. And Mercury retrograde is also a time when the gods have a lot of messages for us, and we would do well to look at what those are. So when I say Mercury is messenger of the gods, what I'm really saying is that Mercury and its cycles, certainly retrograde cycles, is messenger of the other bigger cycles that are happening in the matrix of life right now. And we really need to keep in mind that all cycles are connected in a continuum. So, hey, you know what? Saturn was in Aquarius 2 years ago, and that's in the room right now too. Just because Saturn went into Pisces doesn't mean the energetics that Saturn activated whilst in Aquarius have left the room. They're here too. It's all interconnected. And I think that's something, sadly, that a lot of people lose sight of. And to really get an accurate read of the matrix and what's happening in your life and in the field of life, you have to really include history, its momentum, and where it is now in the present. I mean, that's just history itself, but also energy, archetypal cycles as well. So one thing to consider is that what's happening right now, and you see it in this retrograde, is that Mercury retrogrades are moving out of earth signs where they've been into fire signs. And this retrograde is fire and earth. And if we're going to go into some, I think, exploration of the elements and what they represent, I'm going to say fire is intuition, and earth is obviously this more practical, grounded, structured, and material aspect of co-creation. So a lot of people may assign intuition to Pisces or intuition to Scorpio or the water signs. No, that's psychic. And once again, in my masterclass or in this upcoming YouTube video, I'm going to tell you exactly what the difference is. Intuition and psychic abilities are not the same thing. They can combine into an overall intuitive system, absolutely. But intuition is a fire element, and maybe perhaps in Aquarius a little electric. I feel Aquarius is not really an air sign, it's electricity. And that was an element the ancients wouldn't have known about. So that vase that's pouring water out, it's not a water bearer, he's bearing electricity coming out. And we should be adapting that now into how we see Aquarius, actually. So this is really about, okay, Sagittarius is about that intuitive, bigger picture way to see life and your place in the world and what it means, what life means, what your place means, what the meaning of your life is. That's all in the domain of Sagittarius as a fire sign. Capricorn is the role that you in a very grounded and expressed way, out of your knowing what your place in the world is, the role that you go out and fulfill through service to the collective. Now, usually, once again, we can just in a more plain way say that's a job, career. That's why that's associated with Capricorn. But this is about overall the need for the world, for us to move into deeper understanding around the element of fire. And that if you try to box truth in, it'll burn your house down. And I think in a world where AI, which is masterful at, if you will, presenting a facade, and that's coming on strong, And we're trying to find how we're going to, in a Capricorn way, have laws and some kind of order, manage that. But we also need to, in this next age of what's ahead, really become masterful with intuition, because it's a truth teller. And it can track frequency. I just did an exercise in my class where I had people look at an image and immediately tell me their thoughts about it. And just kind of front loading here. The image was a photoshopped AI image of some bank of trees, supposedly in Finland. But I immediately, because I could feel and sense the way nature works in its laws of creating snow on trees, that wasn't real, because it wasn't in harmony with the actual laws of what snow on trees does. I live in Colorado. I know this all too well. We got a whole bunch of snow right now. And immediately I knew it was fake. But the comments under this post, there were probably, there were thousands actually. Oh my God, the beauty of nature. All these people had no clue that it wasn't real. And you dig a little deeper, do some research, and it wasn't real. So this retrograde is somewhat connected to that. How do you know with a knowing, not a thinking, what's truth? What's true for you? How do you arrive at what's true for you? How do you? And then what do you do with that truth? Does that truth generate an aspiration? Does inspiration generate aspiration? And then does aspiration, and now moving to Capricorn, move into ambition? Where are you at in this chain of how things roll through us as human beings? Where, okay, now I have an ambition to do this mountain climb. And mountain climb is what? A metaphor for a goal, fulfilling some sense of mission in the world. Maybe it can be a metaphor for whatever is true for you. Writing a book, getting sober. I can think of a lot of different mountain climbs that exist. But what mountain are you on right now? And is it the wrong one? And how would you find yourself on, quote unquote, the wrong mountain? What does wrong mean? Well, for me, in this instance, it means it's not in alignment with truth for you. Maybe that's a mountain that your low esteem had you start climbing to get to enough. And now guess what? You are in violation of the truth of soul esteem. You're already enough. Stop that climb. Stop it. Now, if you want to keep going, because on that climb, it's going to med school and you're going to become a doctor. Okay, I'm going to stop you right there and go, why are you becoming a doctor? Is this inspiration? Is this something from spirit, in spiritus? Are you getting spirit here to become through your healer archetype, a doctor? Or are you just trying to make your dad happy because he's a surgeon? Or maybe it's both. But I'll tell you what, until you get clear on why you climb that mountain and what your inspiration, if that's what it is that's motivating you, you're going to have a harder climb when it's not in alignment with truth. And if the truth is you don't have the healer archetype, you don't want to be a doctor. It's the last, but you just did it because it was expected. Well, that mountain at some point will defeat you. And the summit, once you get there, you're not going to be able to see anything other than the world others wanted for you and who they wanted you to be in it. And so this is where you look at the mountain you're on, you look at what climb you're in, and you go, wait a minute, what am I doing here? Why this mountain? What's motivated this? And if it's not spirit, you may not sustain the climb anyway. Because chasing worth, that's not a really great fuel to draw from for a mountain climb. You won't be able to weather the elements once you get higher. And then if shame's running this, you're going to tumble back down to the base, or, get blown right off that mountain. So the metaphor of the mountain climb for me is very encompassing of a lot of what may be happening at a archetypal level for you in this retrograde. Realizing, wow, this climb sucks. I don't know why I'm doing it anymore. I need to ask those questions. Why am I doing this? And I got to get out of the conventional thinking of never give up. Don't ever quit. There's a time when you should totally quit. And there's a time when you shouldn't. Where are you? If you're on the wrong mountain, quit. Descend. Redo it. Come back to home base. Wait for the muses and inspiration to give you the next coordinate and climb. Because if you even reach that summit, you're not going to feel like you're seeing much. You're just going to be like, okay, can I get down now? So this is where you want to consider in this time, what bigger gods are running this Mercury retrograde? Well, one that I really got drawn to is Jupiter retrograde in Taurus. And this brings in another element of mountain climbing, goal setting, and co-creative dynamics as adults here. And this is something that I'm pulling from a series I actually did on Jupiter retrograde in Taurus into this. But Jupiter's been retrograding in Taurus since September 4th, and it's going to station direct right on December 30th, 2 days before Mercury stations direct. So the timing of this finds both planets really standing still at the end of the year. I think it's very poignant. And I think it's poignant because somehow along the way, culturally, at least in the United States, I'll speak for my country from what I observe, we lost sight of the fact that when it comes to Taurus, which is within Taurus, we have the archetype of the gardener. Well, you know what? It takes a certain stability environmentally to garden and bring things to fruition. If you've got an environment that's inhospitable to your goals, to you growing into the next potential you could become, well, that's going to make it hard to grow into that. So we need to, and this is Jupiter and Sagittarius, look bigger at how are we managing the co-creation of our environment. Now, on a very basic level, of course, I could point to climate change. That's the most obvious in the room. It's hard to, plant something and grow it when there's tornadoes whipping through, floods coming, and fires burning, isn't it? But furthermore, and guess what's been happening in the setup phase? This whole summit for climate, sponsored by and held at a place where they're all about oil. I digress. But this is bigger than that. And it's actually more personal than that too. Because if you don't have a stable, let's say, political structure with adults in the room representing you, then I don't know, life could get real messy. And trying to grow gardens and climb mountains could become a whole different thing that we've had in the United States. We've not had to face that for a while because we haven't had any major wars in our own country. But now we have wars that brew within. And all right, how are you going to grow? And what are you going to grow in that? And this is about taking responsibility for, you want to talk about co-creator, co-creation. Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of co's in what you can and cannot become. Ask anyone who suffered from racism or discrimination or homophobia and go down the line, or misogyny. This is still here. And none of us are opted out of these greater patterns, limiting, hey, which mountains we even get to choose and what gardens we get to plant and grow. And I think that where I see a lot of things animating is in, hey, wake up. Jupiter retrograde in Taurus goes, wait a minute, you're not even looking right now at the bigger picture of your environment and what your environment is increasingly becoming inhospitable for growing. You know, if you have a pregnancy now that could kill you as a woman, ooh, SOL if you're in Texas. So, you know, just saying. And now we're back to Sagittarius Capricorn. How did beliefs about birth translate into and codify into law? And how did beliefs about the effectiveness of protest voting, for example, maybe give this the green light? It's just about really, inconvenient, harsh truths that we have to adult up to, because not doing that's already in the room in a lot of arenas of life. And I, as an astrologer and just as a human being, I'm always looking at collective personal. In a society that's so narcissistic, generally speaking, it's all about the personal. Well, hello, Instagram influencer. When you're in a dictatorship, we'll see how much you can say and share on your Instagram feed before you're thrown in prison. Because that's what they do in Russia. Now, I'm just saying. So when we're looking at the shadow process here between Sagittarius and Capricorn, we're looking at spiritual law, we're looking at order, we're looking at meaning, and how that does indeed translate into social law, social order, and how society organizes, and this is the key, organizes power around its political systems, its governmental systems, and its laws. So does society organize power in a way that distributes it democratically, or does it organize it in a way where it's reserved for a crew of certain politicians that seek chaos and shadiness and all sorts of other crazy? We're headed in my own country right here. And so can we create a structure that honors, this was, I think, the attempt of American democracy anyway, to some degree, a very messy attempt, but can we honor a structure in which spiritual power, all men are created equal. All men and women, and anyone who is somewhere in between or whatever are created equal. Can we do that? Can we honor everyone as equal? And can we honor spiritual truths in our social laws and systems? I didn't say religious, what you believe as personal truth for you and your particular personal God truths. I didn't say that. I said universal spiritual truth, where everyone has value. And that's the thing that is on the edge here, because we've never fully arrived there, and now it's looking like we all might be thrown off that mountain before too long. So this is where in Sagittarius you go, okay, what's true for me? How is it true for me? How's it true personally, relatively, universally? And if something is off in terms of how truths translate into law, meaning they don't honor equality, the laws don't honor that, well, that's going to have karma. And so this retrograde, what's it been bringing? That kind of karma front and center. And it's a karma that's not going away. It's just going to compound until we start to take the reins in whatever ways we can. So this brings in questions about belief. Does belief, shape reality, or does reality shape beliefs? It's both, from my point of view. And what do you aspire towards? Has something inspired you to aspire, or something triggered you? And now you're coming from who knows what part of yourself and not actually healing anything, but doing more damage under the guise that you're speaking up and speaking truth and healing. I just had a student come after me because it was her perception that I didn't speak up about what's happening in Israel and Palestine, which I did like 2 months ago, because some other influencer told their following to go after all the spiritual teachers and call them out. And I've been personally dealing with health issues with my mom, a bunch of other personal things, and trying to keep my own life together. And I've got some student coming after me when I'm the gay guy that fucking stood up to bullies as a kid and shaming me into, you didn't speak up. How does anyone know what's going on in anyone else's life enough to say that? That's where we are. And this goes all around. So these sorts of things are pressuring us all on a cultural level. And then you come to your own personal and you have to ask, okay, what mountain am I climbing? And Jupiter retrograde in Taurus goes, okay, here's the thing. Aspire and climb all you want. But if the conditions of your environment aren't hospitable for your goals or your inspired aspirations, it doesn't matter. That mountain you think you're climbing is going to vanish, and you're going to be climbing the one to get your rights back instead. Folks, yeah. So what this comes down to is addressing holistic aspects of co-creation. If we're going to talk co-creation, let's talk co. And I think these are aspects we have forgotten. And, I don't think it's anyone's fault per se. It's just there hasn't been any pressure to remember them for some aspects of society. And we are under contract now, especially if you want to call yourself a light worker, to look toward stable and sustainable governments, political systems, climate and economics. And we have to really move even deeper into social equality and really consider that is the soil that things thrive in. Things do not thrive in toxic political tribalism. How could they? So the question is, personally to you, are you aware of the greater, bigger picture of what's happening? What's your part in it? Where do you feel called by holism to do something? What is that? And the thing to really grasp here, and this is where Capricorn, Judge Judy style, is pushing back karmically on Sagittarius and its shadow side. There is truth in the reality that we don't just objectively create our own reality. We co-create reality. I don't just create my own reality. I co-create it because there's other factors in my environment that are part of the process. If I was homeless, I'm not going to just create the reality that I have a home. Maybe internally I can, and maybe I can't. But the reality is I don't have a home. And that's an objective fact. So we are, I think, being pressured here through all that's going on to start looking at where we are taking our Sagittarian truth, where it's moved out of truth into, fantasy or wishful thinking or just different incarnations of damning, wrathful gods, and where we need to shift this. There's, in this bridge between Sagittarius and Capricorn, there's a vulnerability. And what happens in Sagittarius, by the way, is you come out of Scorpio, which is deep inner shadow work and going into the depths of your emotional system. And out of that, the phoenix that rises in the 4 stages of Scorpio, or the eagle that rises out of that, is now Sagittarius. And the Sagittarius goes on the quest for the deeper, bigger picture as an eagle. I can fly around and look around. How do things connect? How do co-creative laws work? How does this all come together? And from there, all right, now I can apply that to creating a world and systems in the public of equality and health and holism. So we develop guiding beliefs in Sagittarius or aspirations that at best are inspired. And then that goes out into ambition in Capricorn. And in Capricorn, we do come back to the outer tribe of society and tribes. And all of that has in this retrograde something that needs review in your life, something that needs to be looked at. And from the bigger picture that I just got through going through, which is, I'm sure, uncomfortable for lots of people to hear and explore, but to the more personal. So you want to look at what is the process of shifting from Sagittarius to Capricorn, because something in your life needs review there. And that review deals with how you think, how you perceive. You have to examine what drives you, what your ambition is connected to, what the fuel of your ambition is sourced from. Because the way I'm seeing this, and track the news headlines, track what's happening in the world, it's right here, is the trouble starts now, right before this retrograde in the Capricorn zone. The consequences of policy, the consequences of choice, at all levels, personal, governmental, political, the consequences of not aligning to spiritual truth. And okay, they're here. Loss of human life. I would even say reckless loss of human life. And more, and then now we have to go, okay, what did we believe and which gods did we pray to that got us here? Because this ain't so fun. Maybe it's time to go back and review our truths, our gods, our beliefs. Because I think we're climbing the wrong mountain. I think I'm on the wrong mountain here. Now, this is more collective. Let's get it personal, because I think that's also important. This could be just breaking it down into your own personal life. I mean, it could come down to something like I just went through. I just decided to end my online membership because I felt like I was on a work treadmill with it. And as much as I love teaching, it just was not the right container for what I wanted to do next in my teaching. And for me, I realized this isn't the mountain I belong on. I'm not connected to myself. I'm exhausted. I feel a bit undervalued in some regards. And I feel like I have no time. I went through deaths in my family and all sorts of other things these last years. And it just, I need, the mountain I need is the mountain of rest and taking a break and getting back to my sense of my own inspiration. So that might be true for you. You might be like, look, I am on a treadmill. I am unconsciously climbing. I don't even know what this mountain is. So you got to take a minute and go, okay, what's the karmic result of being on this mountain? Maybe it's you're tired all the time. Maybe it's you are taking hits right, left, and center. And some of those might be in your health. I don't know. But for you going in and going, wait a minute, this doesn't feel connected to truth. Oh, I got to go back. What is my truth? I think I forgot. Sometimes we forget. And we got to go back and feel that again and come back to our hearts and come back to and slow down and go, I don't need anyone telling me. I know I'll find it. I just need a good guide. But I got this truth. Because it's part of my soul. So even from the most collective of things, if we looked at the wars happening, I think we'd all just go at a level of soul. It's just something's off with seeing any child blasted up by bombs coming into a hospital. Something's just fundamentally off there. I don't know who could look at that and justify that in some real way with their soul. I can't. And if you can, that's your journey. I can't. But similarly, what else in your life are you just like, I got to get back to my soul here? This doesn't feel nourishing and sustainable. Well, probably because it isn't. And enough making up stories and telling yourself stuff to keep yourself on that mountain. Give up, surrender, get down, get off it. Come back home and see where you're taken next time. See where you're brought to go next. Come back to what is true now in your life. Not what was true 2 years ago, 4 years ago, when we were in COVID. And sadly, a lot of people just, this is not the way they roll. I mean, there's political candidates, man. If I found out half the crap about them that is out there, I'd have left that dude a long time ago. And it's just, there's no bottom, there's no truth, there's no soul. And so this is about returning to your soul agreements. This is about returning to your bigger worldview, what is meaningful for you. And yeah, you gotta slow down and get off the treadmills and get off the climb. Even if it's just, I don't know if I want off the mountain, I just need to take a minute. Take a minute. So I want you to consider that the reasons why you may be on a certain climb, or that you might be in the circumstances you're in, maybe they're not really what you think. You might have a cover story about it. We're all capable of that. Well, let's start coming out of that to truth. So one of the questions, for your journey into this retrograde, what is truth? What is truth to you? How do you know what's true? No, really, how do you know? And it's interesting teaching this class on intuition. I remember when I was writing the copy and I thought, I'm going to ask, what is intuition? And I'm going to hear gut hunch, inner knowing. Okay, and what is that? How does that actually work? Do you even really know what intuition is? And most people will confuse it with their mind. That's why I did this first video. And the intuition is not your mind. It's not. So what is it then? That's actually a Sagittarius question. So it's one to kind of live in and sit with. Now, this is powerful, powerful and dynamic territory. I mean, it just really is. And like I said, it comes right to the soul. And what it also comes down to is identity. Because where you will eventually arrive is, and this is Capricorn, but it's Capricorn that birthed out of Sagittarius, is what identities in you are now calling the co-creative shots. And it's not real helpful. It's, in fact, self-sabotaging and has you stuck on some climb that you do not belong on anymore. So maybe you consider yourself someone who is a very highly sensitive person and very affected by energy in the environment, which technically could be absolutely true. But maybe in that, if you're honest, there's a victim story. And because of that, I'm victimized by my environment. And as your guide, I call bullshit. Okay, bullshit. That's a victim-based identity around being highly sensitive. Come again. What else you got? Could this be your superpower? Could this be your way into empathizing with people so deeply you make an excellent counselor or guide? Do you just need to adult up and manage that sensitivity from a new technical lens and different way? How about, hey, I'm just a real, I'm a healer. I'm okay. Are you paying your rent? Because it seems like you're not. You're an artist. Are you paying your rent? You're a teacher. Are you paying your rent? Paying your mortgage? Okay, because I'm feeling starving next to teachers, starving next to, I'm feeling the identity of starving artist, starving healer, starving teacher. You want to do something about that? Why are you in that identity? How'd you get on that mountain? How'd you get on the mountain of blood donor, codependent? You tired of that climb? So mountains can be based in identity. And this is a time where you go, wait a minute, I'm on the mountain of what? Shadow rescuer? Hell no. And so, yeah. Also think of it this way. The way you climb the mountain itself could be the mountain. So, hey, I climb it like a victim. Well, you got a victim mountain. Okay. Every goal, everything I try to get to in my life, if I'm honest, I carry a victim identity with that. And man, that's a heavy backpack. Okay, that actually is its own mountain. And so, what about what you believe yourself to be? Belief. How does belief tie into identity? So this is a lot to explore. And for every person, it's going to be unique and different. First, I give those cultural sort of references so that you can kind of start to see the archetypal veins of everything. And then you have to locate yourself in it as well. But remember, those cultural references matter too. Because I'm a we, and we are an us. And that is what co-creation is actually about. Now, let's move on to some of the other cycles going on here. Speak to those real quick, and then I'm going to go through some charts. Jupiter's been retrograde in Taurus. I already talked a lot about that. It is about really understanding at a bigger level the necessity of having of co-creating, shall we say, the right conditions environmentally so that we can plant gardens, grow our dreams, grow our goals, and have those safe and protected, and have the opportunity and the right soil in which for those to thrive, grow, sprout, and take off. We're losing that, not only at a level of climate change, but I can't think of any level that isn't under threat right now. So I'm going to say this. You want to know what a calling is? It's something that calls you. It's bigger than you, and it calls you. And oftentimes we think it's something we conjure or figure out with the mind. No, you do not. Trust me, my mind would have never figured out this path. This path in many ways didn't even exist when I was in college and thinking about who I was going to be when I was going to grow up. So callings come from something usually that is bigger than you and that you may not even know exists. And the phone rings when it does. And when it does, it's not going to often be something that maybe gives you, your wounded ego, all the validation it's ever needed. Just saying. So, Chiron is retrograde in Aries and stations direct December 26th. So during this retrograde, and it's mid-cycle, it's directly at 15 degrees right now. So this has been an ongoing journey of activating themes of both and healing around identity, Aries. And we are wounded by identity and we are healed by identity, both and. This is Chiron. So I'm going to leave that in the mix here as something new is ready to, after this retrograde, come online in culture and you and me. And especially if you happen to be in your Chiron return and it's about, okay, how am I going to be with identity? It's not a villain. It's a neutral dynamic of being human. If we get rigid into it, if we have shadow loyalties to certain identities, well, there's karma for that. But, you know, it can be an ally or it can be a saboteur. And sometimes it can be both, for real. Now, Uranus has been retrograding in Taurus since August 28th. It's also around mid-cycle, around 19 degrees in its retrograde right now. And Saturn, having experienced its first of 3 retrogrades in Pisces, is now moving direct in its first year cycle in Pisces. And it's headed toward its setup phase for the next retrograde, which will happen in 2024. I did a whole entire massive series on this that will be available on my website for purchase sometime late this month with 40% off, by the way, because it's the old holiday sale. Yeah, let me just take a minute and tell you about that. It's the old holiday sale, everybody. 40% off on all orders that are $60 or more on my website if you're interested. And that Saturn in Pisces series will be part of it. Okay. Now, there's some lunations going on that are kind of interesting. I'm going to go through these real quick. These are in the PDF guide if you want to go get that PDF guide. So what's interesting here is we kick off, actually, let me show you this, with a new moon, right? Really the day before the retrograde. So Mercury's standing still. This is coming up here in 3 days with a new moon in Sagittarius. And notice Mars right there because it's going to come up and actually conjunct Mercury. I'm going to show you that chart as well. But this starts to show, I know you may not understand how to read charts, but let me just tell you what this sort of says. It just says that when you're looking at a new moon, it is about something emerging as a seed from the shadow. You know, you can't see the moon in a new moon because it's in alignment with the sun. So the night is just completely black, but it's still out there. So there's something, if you will, brewing. And it's interesting this happens like right before the Mercury retrograde. It's almost as if to say, I feel it connected, that in Sagittarius, there are new truths beginning to seed and find themselves planting in our lives. What I think this is going to actually be, by the way, this piece going forward over the next 2 months-ish, is we as cultures and people are going to have to really start to reconcile with objective realities and the necessity of truth making a comeback, and how we all come to a shared perception of truth. I mean, we can all agree that gravity is why we're sitting in our chairs or standing or on the earth at all, right? Because we have a law of physics called gravity, a truth of the earth called gravity. Well, we need to get to other truths similarly. And I think this new moon is on that collective level, bringing that. On a personal level, I think it is a time to sit back and go, what do I believe? What's true? And hey, Robert said, I could even be just taking old school kind of dynamics and then, you know, thinking I'm out of the old psychic templates of co-creation and God, and maybe I'm not. Maybe you're not. How would you know? And I'll tell you, as an intuitive, this was one of the gifts I got through the work I did. You learn to see past culture, and being gay helped me do that because I had questioned everything culture told me because it never felt true. So I already had, hey, I'm going to hell. That doesn't feel true. And I can't tell you why, but it doesn't. So there's this need to go, wait a minute. Am I taking cultural filters and trying to interpret co-creative mystical laws? Yeah, it's called religion, or it's called the current spirituality a lot of people are in. Or am I seeing from the soul back down on the earth grid and at the human beings here and how they move with truth in ways that aren't necessarily true? You won't see that unless you're beyond the cultural filters, which is somewhere that many folks will never arrive. It's not right, wrong, good or bad. It's just not this lifetime for them, if you will. But getting there, there's a certain, as an intuitive, I know it's hard to language this, but there's a certain way you can get to that where you just look. One thing I'll give you, do not take formula with you, because intuition is not formulaic. It is not. You can take structure, but not formula. Now, that new moon kicks it off. This next week, yes, there's going to be some interesting events, truly. And I think that's going to set up a lot of what the retrograde collectively is, but also a lot of what the retrograde personally is. So watch your life and become curious about your truths and how they are systematized in your life now in ways where, in a Capricorn way, where it's how you work in the world, identities that you meet the world through, beliefs you harbor that are connected to those identities. I don't know. Do your identities manage your beliefs, or do your beliefs manage identity? Both, maybe. So that said, moving into the next lunation, let's look at the full moon that happens later in the retrograde. And these are obviously connected. Interestingly enough, though, we had a new moon in Sagittarius, and then we have a full moon in Cancer. And this happens on December 26th. And I think later, almost 4 days before the retrograde ends. I think this is nice because it really is about the need to come home to our hearts, to come home to our emotional base, to come home to what we truly, really need, to feel connected in a sense of home and family with life. And what family, and this is very interesting, happening around the holidays, when many people will be getting together with their families. And so this to me feels really powerful, like healing. Like there's going to be some rough and tumble in this retrograde, but this is a healing, a moment of illumination on that full moon, a way to come home. The path to come home becomes more obvious. It's more lit up in how we can come home together as maybe a society, culture, but also in ourselves. How do you come home to the inner home? Because you can always do that. I love that lunation. There's also some interesting things going on. The solstice, the winter solstice here in the US, obviously summer in the Southern Hemisphere, but that's coming up here. And that happens actually December 21st. And that is the day before the Mercury retrograde midpoint. If you can see, Mercury is just about on the sun. So the solstice and the midpoint come together. What this says to me, and here's the midpoint, by the way, it's the very next day. And it's 0 degrees Capricorn. What this says to me is that this retrograde is about seeking a new balance, a new congruency between belief, truth, and how that's expressed in law and order and our structures socially, and how it's expressed in the way we mountain climb and the mountains we're climbing. A new sort of balance coming around, a new sense of equilibrium within a connection or reconnection to truth, to your truth. And then we move to the midpoint. Now, let me talk about the midpoint. Let me set that up by first saying that all retrograde cycles, especially Mercury retrograde, bring up what's unconscious in you. So keep that in mind. And we can wish it wasn't so, but we all have something that we're unconscious of. And there's a way to work with that process of becoming conscious to make that flow in an easier way, so you don't need synchronicities of fate smacking you in the face to wake you up. And that's a lot of what this guide hopefully serves for you. But I want you to just take a minute and consider the functions of Sagittarius in your psyche, the functions of Capricorn in your psyche and life, what happens in the transitional space between them, and how does this Mercury retrograde in Capricorn roll, and what does this Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius and Capricorn ask of you? Well, it's going to ask you to recognize what's karmically not working too well, and then name the mountain you're on, and then track back from Capricorn consequence to Sagittarian origins. So how did you go from aspirational, ambitious mountain climber to the beliefs? How do you do that? How do you go from this aspirational mountain climber back to your beliefs that got you on that mountain, or back to your truths that got you on that mountain? Is it at this point in your life the right mountain for you? And going a little sociocultural here, how have our Capricorn sociocultural systems and patterns been or become off the mark when it comes to what is spiritually meaningful and true about our life and your life. So you've got to get a coordinate with society, culture, and your identities that interact in tribe there. And question what kind of spiritual or religious beliefs have generated these systems that we're all embedded in to some degree. Now, going Mercury retrograde here, how is your mind wired to think about Sagittarian and Capricorn aspects and dynamics of objective reality? I think there's a shadow side to this idea that you can just choose your reality. I can't just choose to not negotiate gravity or the aging process or how there's day and night and seasons, right? So, come on. So how are you thinking about objective realities that are the co-creation? I mean, you can law of attraction yourself all you want, but if that volcano in Iceland blows up, you're still going to get the lava. And we're all going to get the ash. So what? All right. Now, what are your primary Sagittarian and Capricorn patterns? How are they connected to your default mental sets and ways of perceiving yourself in the world? To know that, you got to know a little bit more about your Sagittarius and Capricorn archetypes. I want to bring up these two slides real quick just to kind of go through that a little bit. Sagittarius. So we've got seeker, judge, intuitive, wounded healer. There's a whole list of possibilities here that kind of run the gamut a little bit from shadow to light. So shadow would be fundamentalist, zealot, dogmatist. And so, all right, do you know what yours are within this pattern? Some of these are what I call sub-archetypes within an astrology sign. Gambler, which isn't necessarily negative or positive. And so what are yours? And then going into Capricorn, this is obviously more in the energy of patriarchy in the masculine, but you've got conservative in the truest sense of what that word actually means. You've got authority, disciplinarian, competitor, strategist, businessman, entrepreneur, and I would say businesswoman, business person, tradition. What you're looking at in Capricorn is structure within the public. It would be the most publicly engaged aspect of identity for you. So your Capricorn identities would be how you maneuver within life in the most publicly engaged way. That's one aspect of them. Also, I would put survivor in here, mountain climber. So if you're looking at, all right, how do I have mental sets within these archetypes? And where are they not working for me anymore? Because they're not what? In alignment with maybe a deeper truth ready to come online, or a truth I used to know, but I kind of, lost touch with, whatever the case may be for you. Now, that said, Mercury retrogrades are always about how you think. And oftentimes you'll hear, hey, just Mercury retrograde, it's time to start thinking outside the box. No. Your mind will forever be the box. You never think outside the box because you're in your mind. What you can do is get out of the box through intuition, through maybe some empathic and psychic stretching out with psychic senses, or through vision. But if you ever get something into your, let's say, sandbox or box that throws a wrench in it, yay. Because that box, you're never thinking outside the box. You have to go to something unknown, an unknown force, an unknown leap to bring information back into the box, to reconfigure the box. And usually to even do that at all, you have to neutralize the identity that's thinking. So if you're going to get through to somebody who's in a cult, the cult mentality or mental set, it's a certain pattern. And you will not get through to a cult person through logic, being rational, anything with the mind. Ask any deprogrammer. You won't. It will not work. The box is engineered to spit out, keep out anything like that. But the only way in is here. People that have broken out of cults is because their family members somehow summoned their soul and said, I'm coming here with my soul. And it summoned so powerfully. It was so powerful that it summoned the soul of the person in the cult to come online, and then that broke the box up. Someone who is so locked into a fundamentalist thinking, a cult mentality, has gotten so far from their soul that the only way you're going to get them out of that is if you call that soul back. Summon that soul. Because going through their mind will not work. Your mind to their mind, forget it. Same could be true with addicts. They don't get sober because of logic. Addictions are absolutely irrational. And for the addict, it's the mind that's sick in the first place. But if you get the soul to come forward, and that's what you would see every time in an intervention, that show, then you got a chance. So to some orb of your own life, or maybe a great orb, this is similar for you. And this is where you kind of go, okay, this retrograde's going to, maybe through some triggering and shadow work, but also soul summoning, call me to leave a box or two behind, some mental sets behind. Now, I'm going to sum this all up and say that the retrograde's themes are about the transitional and developmental challenge that exists between Sagittarius and Capricorn. Moving from Sagittarius to Capricorn presents a challenge, even for the best of us, because we can be in touch with our truth, but life's survival fears and necessities are also in Capricorn. And what happens let's look at spirituality, is that spirituality moves into the Capricorn zone, and now it's hitting the world of wounded ego. It's hitting the world of survival. It's hitting the world of power and survival power, where everyone is jockeying. Is that right or wrong? I'm just naming technical territory in Capricorn for a way to maintain a sense of stability and survival on their own mountain climbs, in their own journeys. Then there are the darker variety that seek to gain power explicitly. And this is the shadow side of Capricorn, to control societies, people in societies, and the power of freedom and freedom of choice. And so even though they claim, they're all for Jesus or whatever, and this is where we have to start looking at what is really true and the vulnerability of that journey from Sagittarius to Capricorn. What that space is, it's an alchemical space that exists between Sagittarius and Capricorn, but it is also your dark night space. And that's where, in this retrograde, I would encourage you to hang out, really. And just to kind of come back to this again, this is the complete wheel, if you will, of human biopsycho-mystical development. Every sign is in you and represents a stage of your own development, a pattern in you. And this retrograde is bringing forward the patterns, stages of Sagittarius and Capricorn, and the transitional space between them both. So what this is about, if you're looking on how to best track this, is, hey, are you ready to lay claim to a new co-creative empowerment for your life? Are you ready to reduce some mental patterns? Maybe drop a few identities, get off a certain mountain? Are you ready to explore the Sagittarian and Capricorn box that your mind cycles in, perhaps? And then you got to understand that from the level of archetypes, archetypal identities, and the functions of the mind. I'm going to tell you that when we're doing shadow work, that is when we are called to the greatest compassion for ourselves, to hug our dragons, and maybe even give others and their dragons a hug. I think we could do well to lighten up on people a little bit, let them be a little fucked up and human, and especially during a retrograde. And, if you're looking at, all right, how do I neutralize the trickster Ohata this time? Well, how guidable and willing are you to change and look at your shadow? First question I'd ask you, can you let go of some identities and their spiritual or religious or world beliefs based on Capricorn karma, the Capricorn karma that's already here? Can you surrender to the unknown? And can your esteem afford to hear a Mercury retrograde message? These are metrics to evaluate yourself. Now, if you're feeling exhausted, you're finding you are getting the 2x4 variety of intervention of synchronistic intervention through this retrograde, or you've got some things in your life just sort of crashing and burning. Well, all right, let's explore whether you should quit the mountain and climb your own. Let's explore what that means. What's it telling you? Because that's your guide. That's your guidance. And then we just come back to Shadow Work 101, by the way. Can you be responsible for your own triggering and stay in the room when things get hard or when you've been triggered? When are you triggerable? And why are you triggerable? When you're triggerable and triggered, you're on to an important lesson. Can you receive it? Can you hang out for it? It's hard. It sucks. I know. Trust me. So I am wishing you the absolute best for this Mercury retrograde phase and time. It's dynamic. It's powerful. There's a lot here. I think staying in the fundamental structure of the archetypal zones active here could be very helpful. And really looking to a complete reevaluation of what is your truth? What mountains are you on? If you're on a mountain that's connected to what's true for you, you can handle that climb. You'll endure it. You'll get up to the summit just fine, because what's fueling it is truly from spirit, truly from your soul. And so if you're finding, I'm exhausted, man, I don't know if I can do life. Adulting sucks. Then maybe it's the kind of adulting you're doing or the mountain you're on. And you need to get back to truth. The retrograde finishes in Sagittarius, right back to that degree 22 degree Sagittarius that it started at. And then in the integration phase, by the way, that's when you have to take all that awareness you get from the retrograde, and now you got to go change your life. Sometimes the integration phase is actually harder than any of the other phases, because now you got to take it to the streets, which means you got to change things up. So keep those things in mind. Now, when it comes to the midpoint, let me give some final perspectives on that, which happens December 22nd. Let's come back to the stats. Life's going to direct you to take a dive into the shadow side of yourself up until this point. And the midpoint occurs, by the way, astronomically when Mercury aligns to the sun in the sky at 0 degrees Capricorn. And this conjunction symbolizes a union with the ego mind and the soul. Think of the sun just illuminating the human mind, your mind. And in that illumination, there's this revelation of the box you're in and the need to get out, and guidance on how. So the Sagittarius Capricorn process is, going to guide you to understand where you have power, where you don't, and how you can shift into an alignment with your optimal potential as a co-creator. And do that through working with Sagittarian and Capricorn energy in a new way. So I personally would say what this means up until that midpoint, it's just a time to be as internal as possible, honestly. Of course, engaging the world and getting synchronicities is also really important, but I think being very attentive to your internal orientation to things and the themes that are going on in your life, because I think by the time the sun and Mercury line up, it's right at 0 degrees Capricorn. It really is, to me, about a new beginning that wants to happen in Capricorn. But you are going to have to go back to Sagittarius and go deep into truth. And hey, I happen to know a guy who was teaching a really badass class on vertical intuition, which is absolutely Sagittarian and Capricorn. It is. Hearing your inner voice. Vertical is Sagittarius, horizontal world's Capricorn. And I'm going to tell you something. It's funny how synchronicity works through me. I just realized that actually just now. And I did not plan on teaching this class during December. Last thing I want to do is a masterclass during the holidays sale and during Christmas, but here we are. And I was telling my students in my membership that many times I do masterclasses during Mercury retrogrades. It's because that's what we're doing in a Mercury retrograde. We're going in to redo something, to learn a new level of whatever it might be. In this case, intuition, truth, and then take that to the horizontal streets of our lives. So I hope you can join me in this. I think it would be amazing to have you. And like I said, lesson 1 starts next week, 50% off for a limited time. And if you're wanting to warm up first, hey, check out my new series on YouTube. Intuition versus the Mind's Useless Guidance is already out. Coming out this next week is Psychic versus Intuitive Abilities. That is going to be so fascinating for you to hear. I just know it. And if you want a PDF guide to kind of get going and have this guidance more available in a structured way, go to my website. There's a link to the PDF guide right under the video description. Click on it. You can go get that yourself too. Now, let's see. Oh my God, I ran way late. So thank you so much. I hope this was helpful, impactful, and spoke to you in some way, and that you found it of benefit. If you wouldn't mind, I would love it if you would smash the like button on YouTube or Facebook. Really appreciate that. And share this with whoever you think it might help. And I hope, I'm going to look at your comments and look at the feedback probably tomorrow because I'm exhausted. But I will see you again very soon, actually this next week, in a brand new installment of my 4-part video series on intuition on YouTube. So I will just say, mwah, lots of love. Happy holidays. Don't forget the holiday sale, 40% off. All things on ohado.com that are over $60. And by the way, there's a really cool course called Ascension, and it's about goal setting, but doing it through archetypes and climbing mountains through archetypes. Make sure you check that out. It's 40% off, and it's also very in alignment with this this particular retrograde. If you took vertical intuition and ascension, you would have it all wrapped up in a bow. All right, thank you for joining me. I want to just also announce that I'll be doing Mercury retrograde guides like this going forward for you on YouTube and stuff. So I look forward to that in 2024. My best to you for the new year, and I'm sure I'll see you before this year's over. But in the meantime, take good care of yourself. Love yourself no matter what. You're enough no matter what. I don't care what mountain you're on, how messy it is, how messy the identities are. You're always enough. You've always been enough, and you're always going to be enough. So always know that truth. I call it soul esteem. All right. And by the way, someone called me out on this, and I just want to be clear. When I say namaste at the end, that's because that's what the Indians taught me in the late 90s at my yoga trainings. So namaste. Lots of love. The light in me bows to the light in you. I'll see you soon.